All right. Thank you, everybody, and welcome back to the Unitarian Congregation of Men in Uxbridge with Reverend Patricia. Today, I'll be starting off with Pure Imagination, originally from the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, sung by Gene Wilder.
Good morning and welcome again to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. So glad each of you is here today, those of you in person and those who are joining online. Today's service is about imagination. So if you, for those online, if you see me waving a flag once in a while, I've invited folks here to wave colorful flags at parts they like. So for a little fun today about imagination, and thanks to Rowan and Tristan for helping assemble the flags this morning. Opening words by David Usher. Open your hearts to the wonder of worship. Open your minds to the eternal quest for meaning and truth. Open your eyes to the miracle of creation. Open your arms to the embrace of your fellow people. Open your souls and let the divine sweep in. Please join me in singing opening hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." Please rise and bow to your spirit, and we will remain standing for the chalice lighting and affirmation afterwards. Number 16.
How many verses, Maestro? 2, 3?
What am I seeing? Yeah, it's good too. Two good runs.
Just right to be in the valley of low.
like to invite Peter to come forward and light our chalice this morning. Chalice Lighting Words by Carl Seberg, slightly adapted. Let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak and the songs we sing. Let there be help and healing for our disharmony and despair. Let there be some peaceful stillness for the voice within us and beyond us. Let there be joy in our coming together. We light this chalice for truth, help, and joy. Thank you, Peter. And let us join in the affirmation of this congregation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You may be seated. And we will now have a responsive reading, number 548 in the back of the hymnal, entitled Summer Warmth by Helen Cohen. And we will all say the italic sections together. 548. We stand at the edge of summer. The sun has at last warmed us enough that we begin to trust in its presence. The last burst of spring blossoms, lavender and white and deep pink banks of rhododendron, are giving way to summer peonies and roses. O source of the turning seasons, of earth, of life, of promise gradually becoming fulfillment, may your people find a lightening of the burdens with the brightening of the sky. Amen. We will now enter a time of sharing. I invite you to come forward and light a candle with anything that's on your heart this morning that you'd like the community to know. Any joys or concerns or milestones. So you are now invited.
Good morning. Good morning. Candle of gratitude for the congregation. We had the Strawberry Festival yesterday. I wasn't able to be here, but I heard everything went swimmingly, and so thank you to everybody who stepped up, helped out, participated, and a special thank you to Leslie Kate, who kind of took the reins a little bit this year and last year, so she's 2 for 2, I think. Hopefully we'll make this a habit, and she'll bless us with her talents for next year as well. So thank you to everyone. And then a candle of healing for my mother-in-law, who had surgery this week.
Thank you, Ken.
Yes, another candle as a thank you to the Strawberry Festival guys. Another successful year. I'll wait till announcements until I get the good news financially, but more importantly is the spirit, right? So I'm sorry I ducked out for an hour because I missed like Lois Gannon, who comes faithfully every year. She lives out in Brookfield, and this is her annual, and she touched base. Matt Kucharski, who's a twin son of Jody Kucharski, a great spiritual leader of this church when I first joined. He comes from Situate because he was a teenager here and he knows he's got kids. What do you do on a second Saturday? So just so many older people. We're getting older, but there are not many of us. But the few of us that there were, it's kind of burnt into the soul that second Saturday. So thank goodness for traditions. And let them change and blossom. Also thanks for the volunteer that the music Morella generously preferred. So many gave. Many gave and served, and that's why we are not all here today. I think some of us have tired backs and red necks.
So I had the great fortune of working with an old music teacher of mine. She was the string teacher I had back in middle school. Now she had been hiring me to accompany her string students for many years, and I saw her for the first time this week after not seeing her for a couple of years because of the pandemic. Come to find out, she's going to be needing a hip replacement very soon, and she's also diabetic. You know, she's been somebody that was indulging me from when I was like 10 or 11 years old, bringing me to the This is for Melanie always, for good health and great teaching.
Melanie. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
This is for my daughter-in-law who faces back surgery next Tuesday
Mm.
in Rhode Island.
Mm.
Did I say Whitney? Yes, the name is
Whitney.
So I wish her all the best for it. She understandably is pretty proud.
Mm. Thank you, Tim.
So my first panel is today. Stuart, I think 2 or 3 days ago, I stepped on a shard of glass
Ooh.
and cut my foot.
Ooh.
And it hurt a lot. And my second one is happiness that it's healed inside.
Yeah. Good.
One for a happy thing, positives. I was fixing the roof again and found a place that a good fit for the repairs. And had a great time yesterday. We went to the strawberry festival amidst having to pack and move a lot sooner than I thought. But that's going well. And then, unfortunately, last night I got a call from a really close friend of mine that her mom died on a cruise that they were on suddenly, and she's in the second longitude. So it's a lot.
Mm.
And yeah, I appreciate prayers for my friend's family and myself. Support definitely needed.
Mm.
To kind of wrap my head around that. Yeah, overall, still okay.
Mm. Thank you. We'll be thinking of your friend's family.
I'd like to light 2 candles. The first candle I'd like to dedicate to the graduating class of 2022 from William E. Tolman High School in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And the majority of those who graduated were students who came through my classroom at one point or another. And it has been an incredible experience to watch these young people grow from where they were in the 9th grade to the 12th grade, to see the people who they've become. And I always hold them dear in my heart, and I hope that of all things they find happiness and peace in their lives. And the second candle I light in honor the memory of my mother, Patricia Louise, who celebrated her birthday yesterday. I miss her so very much.
Mm. Thank you. Is there anyone else? I brought a card this week for the Tatro family who lost their brother in the motorcycle accident the day before Memorial Day. So I'll bring this to coffee hour if you folks would like to sign it. We can mail that to Sue, the sister of the deceased, and their family. And I light this final candle for the many, many things that remain unspoken in our hearts and minds this morning. It is good to share our hearts in community. Let us pray. Spirit of life and love, we've heard many things in this time of sharing. We've heard the thanks for the Strawberry Festival and the volunteers that made it happen. That Ron is moving to a new place that sounds great for him and his kids. For Bill's graduating class. For Tristan's recovering foot. And a couple thanks for the festival. And then we've heard the people in need of healing this morning. We think of Sonia's mother, Maria. We think of Matt's teacher, Melanie. We think of Tim's daughter-in-law, Whitney. And Tristan, as his foot continues to recover. And then we heard about the families that have experienced losses. Ron's dear friend's mother just passed very suddenly. We think of Ron's friend and their family, and Ron and his family, and all who loved her. May they have strength and comfort. We think of Bill as he remembers his mother. May the memories be a comfort. We think of the Tatro family who is suffering their sudden loss of their brother and relation. And for all those others that weren't named this morning, those celebrations that we have in our hearts, some may be little, some may be big, some may be yet emerging in our lives. We give thanks for those things, and we offer our prayers and lift up our hearts for those in need of help, those who are suffering, those in need of healing, those who are grieving. May the needs of each person be met, and may we be there for one another as the hands and hearts of the divine. We thank you for all these blessings in our lives. We pray all of this in the name of the Spirit of love. Amen. Continuing in the spirit of prayer and meditation, I'd like to invite you into the next section of our service. I have some words from Thich Nhat Hanh, and I will play my singing bowl as we continue in that spirit of meditation, lifting up our hearts. And then we will sing Spirit of Life, number 123, together in a meditative way. But first, the words from Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living beings, evoking the presence of the great compassion. Let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. And let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other and to ourselves. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life, with awareness also of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts, in our communities, and peace on earth. Peace. peace. Today's story is called God's Hat by Christopher Boos. Chris said that originally it was based off of an African story that he heard third hand, and so he rewrote it, and all the details are his. God's Hat. Once upon a time, there was a village with a road that went straight through the center of town. One day, something strange and remarkable happened. God walked down the road, and God was beautiful. She wore a long, flowing robe, and on top of her head was a wonderful hat. All the people stopped to stare at God as she walked by, and they kept staring as she disappeared in the distance. "Boy, God is amazing," said one man, "and what a beautiful blue hat she had on." "Yes, God was magnificent," said a woman from the other side of the road. "But it wasn't a blue hat she was wearing. It was a red hat." "You're wrong," said the man. "It was definitely a blue hat." "No, you're wrong," said the woman. "It was definitely a red hat." And as the two argued, others started joining in the dispute. Soon the whole village was arguing. All the people on one side of the road were certain that God was wearing a blue hat, and all the people on the other side of the road were positive that God was wearing a red hat. People got mad at this disagreement, and they actually started screaming at each other. Finally, they got so angry that they decided to build a wall that went straight through the center of town. From that point on, people on one side of the wall were enemies with the people who lived on the other side of the wall, and they never spoke to each other. So on one side of the wall, the people built a church where they worshiped a God who wore a blue hat. And on the other side of the wall, the people built a church where they worshiped the God who wore a red hat. And years passed, many years, and the people were still enemies. Then one day, God came walking back through the village. She was smiling and balancing on top of the wall the people had built so many years ago. This time, God was wearing no hat at all. All the people ran to the wall and cried, "You must settle our argument." This time they weren't focused on how amazing it was to see God. They just wanted God to settle the argument. So the one man said, "People on that side of the street say when you walked across the village many years ago, you were wearing a red hat. But we know better. We know you were wearing a blue hat. So tell us, what color was your hat that day when you walked through our village?" God looked puzzled for a moment, began to scratch her head and thought, "I think I do remember walking through this village many years ago," God said. "And on that day, I believe I was wearing my hat that was blue on one side and red on the other. And saying nothing more, God continued walking down the wall until God disappeared off into the distance. It was very quiet. Suddenly, there was a sound of one child laughing. Then another child started laughing, and another, and soon the whole village started roaring with laughter. Everyone was laughing because they realized how foolish they had been. And as the sound of the laughter grew louder and louder, the wall began to shake. The wall that was built up between the two sides of the road. The wall began to shake, and then it started to crumble. And then it started crumbling all the way to the ground. There was no more wall, and the people in the two churches came together and worshiped the God who wore no hat, or who wore a red and blue hat, or who wore whatever color hat, because all of a sudden the color of the mat didn't matter anymore. What mattered was their community. And so for many years after that, the people told the story of God's hat and how laughter had brought down the wall between a divided and foolish people. And that is today's story. And now it's time for the offering. And I did find a joke for you today for the call for the offering. A kindergarten teacher gave her class a show and tell assignment of bringing something in to represent their religion. She asked the children to please tell us something special about your religion and to show us what you brought in. The first child got up in front of the class and said, "My name is Benjamin, and I am Jewish. We have Sabbath every week, and I brought in the Star of David to show." The second child got up in front of the class and said, "My name is Mary. I am Catholic, and we have the Eucharist, and this is a crucifix that I brought in to show everyone." The third child got up in front of the class and said, "My name is Tommy, and I am Unitarian. We have coffee hour, and I brought in donuts and clementines." I adapted that last part. So the morning offering will now be gratefully received as we hear the offertory. I'll let you introduce it.
Thank you. This would be Over the Rainbow, originally by the Hawaiian ukulele player Is. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Peter, for collecting the offering. I probably should have said that Tommy brought in a chalice, since that's our main religious symbol, but I think a child might be more excited about the treats at coffee hour. And I wanted to also thank all of you who give of your time, of your talent, of your treasure. Thank you so much for all who give and make it possible for us to keep our doors open as the voice of a liberal religious community here in the Blackstone Valley. Today's sermon is about imagination, the power of our imagination. Sometimes the wolf cries, "Girl." Sometimes the hero stumbles and falls right off the page. Sometimes the princess rolls her eyes and says, "I don't want to be saved." Sometimes the dragon needs rescuing, and the villain aches to be helped. Sometimes in the darkness, the lost boy finds himself. Sometimes the prince is cunning and not at all who he seemed. Sometimes the witch's kindness shows it is she who deserves to be queen. Sometimes the girl cries. Sometimes the wolf cries girl. Just because we've been told something doesn't make it true. By S.R. Poetry. We need to open up our imaginations. The Buddha said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." Our imaginations, our thoughts, our beliefs, our visualizations have powerful ramifications for our lives, our communities, and yes, even our world. We all have the power of imagination. Like most tools, we can use our imagination in a variety of ways. We have the ability to reflect on the past and dream up what we want to create in our lives. In fact, the first step to doing anything is to imagine it and believe it can be done. Authors Sherry Rosenthal and Susan Reeves say, all creation, whether a paperclip, an art masterpiece, a loving relationship, or war, follow the same design. The creation begins as an invisible thought, and then we charge it with emotional energy. We speak of it with conviction, and we act on it with authority. And that's how we create things in the world. We are either the authors or the consumers of visions. We are either the authors or the consumers of visions. It's easy to get hooked into the visions of others. Corporations wanting us to believe we need to buy their stuff. Social media accounts that invite us to compare with others and find ourselves lacking. Even the way our parents and caregivers viewed us that may still be ringing around in the back of our heads. And that doesn't even take into account the worldviews we are offered in ordinary conversations around water coolers and backyard fences or their 2022 equivalents. Let us take back the power of our imaginations and reject the colonization of our imagination by others. Let's invite the power of two sets of words, what if and as if. What if gives us a tool of flexible thinking. For example, what if we think these things? What if there is a spark of the divine in every person? What if other living beings have worth and dignity too? What if I am more powerful than I have previously believed? What if things that are uncomfortable or unpleasant could be reimagined? Reimagined, not to make them all sparkly and desirable, but helpful in some way. Maybe helpful because we can grow through those uncomfortable experiences. Or good because we can bond with others over them. Or helpful and good because these experiences may give us an unexpected gift. Even those uncomfortable, unpleasant experiences may have a gift hidden within them. This gift that they may carry sometimes we might not even recognize till later. I remember once, some years ago, I was running a bit late, and I wanted to drive a bit faster to make up some time on the road. Not a good idea. Anyway, I got behind a very slow car, exceptionally slow, and here I was all in a rush, and I had to drive behind this slow car, and I was not very happy about that. After I followed them for a while, I saw a police car checking for speeders. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, if it wasn't for the slow car in front of me, I might have gotten stopped for speeding. Did I know about that when I was unhappy about the slow car? Absolutely not. That's a very small example, but there are bigger examples of how hidden gifts in more challenging circumstances may not be revealed until some later time, such as one of them I mentioned earlier about growth through that experience. When you're going through this thing, you might not be thinking about how it's helping you grow as a person, but later you might realize, hey, that was actually a pivotal moment in my life. Going through that experience actually helped me more than I could have imagined at that time. Maybe you've heard the word pronoia. Pronoia, I never heard of that until recently. But pronoia is the opposite of paranoia, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. Pronoia is the belief that all the things in the world are conspiring to support you. Instead of they're out to get you, everything is happening in order to support you. What if you believed that? Not believed it firmly, but just toyed with the idea and lightly thought, what if it is true? And lived as if it was true. How might that change you? What if encourages us to think about things differently, and as if invites us to live as if the things we imagine are actually true? Maybe you are not sure that there is a spark of the divine in every person, including yourself. However, if you seek to live as if every person has this divine light inside them, how might you treat others and yourself with more kindness and respect? If you live as if the person who is bagging your groceries or the person on that challenging customer service call both have something of the divine in them, and you do too, how would that change how you react and how you live your life? What if you loosened even more of your assumptions with thinking what if and living as if? Say you have a negative interaction with someone. Instead of viewing them as a difficult person and fearing future negative conversations or avoiding interactions with them, what if you consider that they were simply having a bad day? It's not who they are, it's not about you, it's not how they'll be in the future, and you can perhaps seek to be more positive or at least neutral about them in future interactions. Also, did you ever feel like nothing is ever going to change in some situation? You feel like you're in a rut, or this relationship is in a rut, or the world is in a rut, and you feel like nothing is ever going to change. Well, you can get out of that feeling by imagining how things could be different despite your feeling. As we know, things always change. Nothing stays constant. So if you feel like it's always going to stay the same, you can challenge that feeling, and you can challenge it by imagining something different. Even if you don't have full belief that this is going to happen, you can imagine it and live as if it's going to be different. And that will help change your feeling a lot of times. There's something about the present moment that can feel so permanent, despite our intellectual knowledge that we know that everything changes. Imagining the changes we want to see, even when we have little idea how the changes could come about, can free us from that strong grip of the present moment and our attachment to that present moment. Futurist and game designer Jane McGonigal writes about episodic future thinking. She suggests you can imagine what it may be like when you wake up tomorrow. Where are you when you imagine you're waking up tomorrow? What would your mood be when you're waking up tomorrow? What's the first thing you do in your imagining when you wake up tomorrow? Now, you might imagine tomorrow very much like today, because most of us are creatures of habit. So we'll probably think tomorrow will be just the same as today. But we could imagine something different for tomorrow. Then, Jane McGonigal suggests we do the same for 1 year in the future. What would it be like when you wake up 1 year from now? Maybe that's a little easier to imagine some changes. A lot can happen in a year. And then she suggests you stretch your imagination and do the same visioning for several years or 10 years in the future. That, maybe you can imagine all kinds of changes. You might think about where you want to be in 10 years. Who do you want to be with? Where do you want to live? What do you want to be doing? And you can imagine those things as you wake up that morning 10 years from now. Doing this visioning while imagining as many details as possible, and that's key to imagine details. Doing this visioning focuses your brain to fill in the blanks. Instead of simply remembering what it already knows, your brain has to invent a new possibility. And after you've made this new memory in your mind of the visualization, something amazing can happen. What was previously unimaginable to your brain starts to become imaginable. Episodic future thinking, or EFT, enables us to pre-feel different possible futures, making it a powerful motivational tool. Additionally, practicing EFT is strongly linked with mental well-being. People who engage in EFT are more likely to feel optimistic, motivated, and more in control of their future. This is because researchers believe that when you practice this, you're learning to control your imagination. Instead of just taking whatever images pop in your mind, you're actually becoming more of an author of your own story. Some people may have a hard time imagining positive possibilities for the future. It might be hard for some people if they're sad or if they're stuck in a rut. And other people may overly visualize negative possibilities. It's easy to focus on the things that might go wrong. However, doing this visioning practice can give people more control over what they see in their mind's eye and what they believe, and also can help them clarify what their goals are so they can make steps toward these things. Author Shakti Gawain tells readers to imagine their best possible lives, considering many aspects of your life, your relationships, your work, your leisure time, personal development, the condition of society, and more. And then she invites them to write about their best life, as if everything were just as they wanted it to be. You can do this and write a letter from your future self to your current self. That's one way to do it. Jill Suttie wrote that doing that exercise encouraged her to reflect more on her values, her deepest desires, and her goals. Jill believes that taking the time to imagine a better, more fulfilling future started her on the path where she is today. Some years ago, Jill imagined herself being married to a loving man, having a meaningful job, speaking new languages, playing more music. She really visualized these things in her life. And then, as she wrote some years later, all those things have come to pass. They didn't happen instantly. They took more clarifying goals, they took more hard work, they took networking with other people, they took a lot of things. But the visualization of thinking about her future self, what she wanted, was the first step for her clarifying and being able to work toward her goals. And then she accomplished them. So, you've probably heard the saying that if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it. So I think this is a really great practice, and I encourage all of us to do this or do this more. And then I have a special meditation I'd like to share with you to close this sermon. It's called the Peaceful World Meditation, and it was written by a friend of mine, Judith Corvin Blackburn, some years ago. Judith is an author and therapist, and I have adapted this. This meditation can help us imagine something bigger than our individual lives, and also help us imagine our place in this bigger vision. I invite you to get comfortable as we prepare for the meditation. You may settle into your pews. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel yourself making contact with the pew. You may close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Let's take a few breaths together. I invite you to create and hold in your mind and heart an image of you living in a peaceful community of caring people. Let's start with the physical environment. Where is your peaceful community? Are you by the ocean? In the mountains? In the desert? In the woods near a lake? See yourself living with kind and conscious people in this place. The people around you are manifesting love, peace, and healing energy. Breathe in the feeling of your peaceful community. Notice the sounds in your community. Do you hear music? Sounds of nature? Laughter? Conversation? What fragrances do you smell? The salt of the sea? Sweet mountain air? Wildflowers? The earthy smell of the forest? Your community has no poverty, no crime, and no injustice. The few disagreements that come up are resolved peacefully. People live from their spirits and not from their egos. So disagreements are few and are solved in a spirit of peace and understanding. What kinds of dwellings are in your community? How do people live together? In families? In groups? Alone? Do children go to schools, or do they work alongside their parents? Feel what it feels like to live among people who are loving and peaceful and relaxed, and living around children and elders and people with various kinds of diversity who are all happy and secure and valued members of the society. What kind of work goes on in your community? Imagine that everyone follows their passions and talents to contribute to the society. All the work gets done and people feel fulfilled doing the work that they're doing. How do they come together to divide up the work that needs to be done? Picture the community sharing resources. See yourself starting your day with meditation or exercise or art or gazing at nature, whatever feels best to you. See yourself dressed for your day with comfortable, earth-friendly clothes. You eat a healthy breakfast with loved ones or with your community, or alone for contemplation. Take a moment and let the contribution you make in this community come to you intuitively. For the work that you do you go out into the community, or do people come to you? Do you work with your hands? Do you work with your mind? Do you grow food? Do you work with technology? What do you create in the community? How are you helping others in the community? Do you work alone or in a team or both? Notice how it feels as you go about your work. How does it feel to be at peace with yourselves, others, and the world? Know that you and your loved ones are safe, even the most vulnerable. There's a feeling of well-being about the environment as the oneness of all creation is affirmed and practiced. Notice how it feels to meet others in the community, knowing without a shadow of a doubt that they wish you great well-being, that they care about you and your loved ones, that they deeply value and support your work. Every time you meet others in the community, there is an acknowledgement of your connection to them and everything else. People here treat others kindly. They treat others the way they would like to be treated. People believe this way and behave this way because they truly care for one another and they truly understand that they're deeply connected. Feel how living this kind of life would be for you. Can you feel your strength and vibrancy? Can you feel your body's energy? Do you feel the well-being of your spirit? Does your heart feel full? Does your heart feel light? Or both? What emotions do you feel living in this community? We can help create this kind of community. Maybe not in all the details we just imagined, but the essence of it. We can seek the ways of love and treat all people with kindness. We can realize how deeply we are connected to everyone and everything else. The more joy and peace and love we're able to hold in our hearts, then the less fear and guilt and shame we can hold. We will hold as we hold more love and light and joy and peace. And then we can radiate that love and light back out into the world to others. The more we realize our deep connection with each other and with other beings, the more we can help create the peaceful, sustainable, caring world that we want. If you have closed your eyes, I now invite you to open them when you're ready and rejoin the circle of our community here. This is an example of how we can visualize the world that we want, as well as the life that we want. Visualization is a positive, powerful tool. With the power of our imaginations and with our words and actions, we are in the process of becoming. We are emerging. With imagination, we get to help decide how we are emerging. And then, with our words and our deeds, we act on our visions, and we get to help decide how the world is emerging. What an awesome privilege and responsibility is ours. May we imagine well, and may we live well. Amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Matthew. It's now time for announcements. When you leave today, please return your flags in the vase there so we can use them for future services. I want to do a service on play sometime. That's why I especially got the flags for a service on play. But I thought it works for imagination, too. And I'll bring the card up to coffee hour, so if you could sign it, that would be nice. I wanted to lift up the Milford Community Meals Program again. We're still collecting donations in the box in our entryway there for the folks in our wider community who are food insecure. So if you want to bring in donations of things like cans of soup and pasta and chili and breakfast foods and bottles of water, I'd love to be able to bring another box of donations over to the Milford Community Meals sometime soon. We haven't done that recently, so I just wanted to bring it back into our awareness. Summer services will be informal in Goss Hall. There'll be more conversation-based, facilitated conversations with refreshments. Most Sundays during the summer, not the July 4th weekend. The last Sunday here in the sanctuary is the last Sunday in June, the 26th. After that, and after the holiday weekend, we'll have the regular summer informal services. So if some of you would like to lead them, they're very easy to lead. They're conversation-based. You can bring a reading or some questions or simply a topic and have a good time gathering with folks. So we will do that throughout the summer with the exception of August 14th when Hopedale Unitarian Parish has invited us to join their worship service in Hopedale, just 2 miles down the road. Exactly 2 miles from our church to their church. I clocked it once. So hope you can attend to that on August 14th. We hosted them last year, and they're returning the favor this year. And I think, and then we will start up services back in the sanctuary the Sunday after Labor Day. Are there other announcements this morning?
Yes, very briefly, don't have paper, but the strawberries cleared like $14.90. I think the books came in at $76, and the vendors came in at $190. So it's like $1,700 total profit. So thanks for many donations. One thing, we probably could have charged more for the strawberries, and there was some discussion, but it didn't happen. So we held the line for inflation. We did our bit to keep it down, and I think people enjoyed themselves. That's the most important thing. So thank you all.
Yeah, it was a great event, and I second all thanks to all the volunteers. Tim had told me a higher figure for the books. And,
Did you subtract the 70? Yep. Well, all the numbers we'll have to take out for the strawberries because I didn't have a strict list. I had 3 pots of in my.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, we made some profit, and that was wonderful because it's a significant fundraiser for the church. So, and also it's just such a great community building event. It was great to see so many of you and some other folks and some folks that used to attend and some new folks. So it was really wonderful.
And Rita and her family. So Rita was there. So that's an occasion we don't often get the chance.
Yes, that was nice to see Rita. Are there any other announcements? Okay, well, we'll go into our closing hymn, which is number 121, We'll Build a Land. We'll rise in body or spirit, and we'll remain standing for the extinguishing the chalice and the serenity prayer.
Thank you.
us remain standing for the extinguishing the chalice. I invite Peter to come forward and extinguish the chalice. Thank you. We have gathered in love, worshiped in hope, and lifted our hearts in peace. We go now to share these blessings with the world. And let us join in the serenity prayer together. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You may be seated for the benediction and postlude. The postlude is Imagine by John Lennon. But first the benediction.
First the benediction. All right, here we go.
Benediction by Susan Van Dresser, slightly adapted. Let us sing the magic of imagination by which we know one another and learn the lives of eras gone by. Let us sing the magic of creation by which we build the world of our soul and teach us wisdom to others. Let us sing the magic of our lives together, holding and shaping by the movement of breath from heart to lung, all new life that is to come. Let us go now with singing. Let us go now with magic in our fingertips. Let us imagine and touch this world with life. Go in peace.
Now, I know everyone knows the song. Probably going to be asking for some help on the lyrics. Keep a good ear. Good job, Peter.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.